I'm Matthias, and I'm representing architecture here for today, and this is Marcus, and he is representing user experience for us today. And we are working a lot together in our institute, so it's Fraunhofer IESE in Germany, and we experience a lot of challenges exactly as introduced. And we try to overcome them, and we made a lot of experiences, and we are using the example of Google Maps today to show you what it means to work together and how architecture and user experience can come to a level where both are really good and supporting each other. So, and that's what we want to present you now in the next 45 minutes.
But we want to start with some stereotypes, yeah? Because when you talk about these two disciplines, user experience and architecture on the right side, user experience on the left side, there are many stereotypes assigned to that. And so we borrowed, as you see, from the Get a Mac campaign. Yeah? We borrowed these two characters. So Matthias is represented by PC guy on the right side, on your left, yeah? And user experience is represented by the Mac guy. Yeah? And when you look at the physical stature, yeah, it was very obvious that I'm the Mac and he's the PC. Yeah? Okay, so when you look at architects, yeah, they really like diagrams. Yeah? They love them. Yeah? They love to draw pictures of software. Yeah? And very complicated pictures. And yeah, the user experience guy is usually not that much. Yeah? But that's only because they think that we don't understand these images. That's of course the truth. Yeah? And the thing is, it's very hard for us to argue with them because the architects are definitely in the majority. Yeah? There's so many of them. There's usually this one guy or this one girl that is having to do the user experience afterwards. And this is pretty bad. Yeah? But the other side is, usually these are old men in architecture. Yeah? So we have to say, software architecture is like the art of old men drawing pictures of old software. Yeah? And that's difficult. And they like to document the stuff. Yeah? And there's also the stereotype that the user experience guys don't like document anything. Yeah? They really love this. Yeah? They really love to do this. And of course they have all the money in the project. Yeah? They sit on it, yeah? And they can do whatever they want, and we have nothing. Yeah? And of course that makes them like bullied. Yeah? So they are full of hot air, yeah? And they can do whatever they want. They sit on their throne, yeah? And they can say, what do you want, you user experience guys? We made software architecture. There was no PC, there was no internet, there was no mobile, yeah? There was no this funny graphical user interface stuff, and still we had to make great software architecture. What do you really want? Of course, they have to admit, usually the female population is much more represented in the user experience world than in the software architecture world. That's maybe some kind of a plus on our side, but as they say, we are pretty much replaceable, yeah? If you know one of us, yeah, you know all of them. Yeah? You can not that much complicated to do anything with user experience. And that's the thing, yeah? And this is a great example of that, yeah? And you can interpret this image in two ways. The one way is, sometimes we have to argue why this is not exactly the same as this, yeah? Even maybe on the first glance, it may appear the same, yeah? But it's not exactly the same way. Yeah? And the other way to interpret this is they bring us this and say, could you please make this out of it? Yeah? At no cost. Yeah? So if we on our side have an idea and we want to really do this in this project, or they try to shut us up, yeah? Because this is dangerous, bringing something new into the project. We always have to get into the ring with the software architecture and fight for our idea. And what's the usual behavior then, yeah? Okay, we represent our idea and then, oh, they are shocked. And if we explain a little bit more, they start to whine, yeah? If we explain a little bit more, they play dead, yeah? Yeah? Oh, that's definitely not a possibility. Okay, but then they start to listen to us. But they are very skeptical if this what we want to do is really possible, yeah? And if this is really capable. And sometimes, oh, it's so expensive, yeah? It seems as if they have to sell their last shirt to do this thing, yeah? And if this does not work, then they call the boss. And then the boss comes, and of course they have all the money, they're the more the important people there, yeah? And of course the boss then explains to us why this will not work, what we are going to do. But on the other side, if the software architects have a great idea, or let's try microservices or what other great new technology they want to achieve, yeah? this is the crazy cool shit, yeah? And this is what they really want to do, yeah? And this is, of course, more important because you need specialists to do this, yeah? This is not just an ordinary user experience thing, yeah? You need specialists to do this. Is some kind of rocket science if you want to introduce something like that. But okay, let's keep the fun on the side. Honestly, nowadays, there's much more talking about the user experience and the user-centered design and how important the user journey is and the users in the center of all design. And somehow we forget all these important architecture decisions that actually enable all this cool stuff. So I think we should cheer even more for software architects. Maybe not at this conference because we are all architects, but in general. But therefore we have to talk to each other. We have to understand each other, yeah? We have to feel each other's pain in doing this, and only together we can achieve great new software, great new features. We have to somehow fall in love for each other's discipline and do this. And that's what we want to do today. But how can we actually find a way from software architecture to user experience? And we said, of course, with Google Maps. So Google Maps is our example application that we are now use to illustrate some architectural decisions, some user experience decisions that may or may not have some influence on each other. Of course, as you know, before Google Maps, maps looked like that. This was a street map. Each and every brand had its very own complicated folding style, yeah, that you need to know. And this is only representing the street view of everything. If you wanted to have some topological view, so this is the most famous German school book, an atlas, the Dirke Atlas, and if you want to have topological information, you need some kind of another source, not just the street map. And this is the current version of this atlas, and just by putting some kind of an app icon on it, it's still not a digital version of it. Yeah? So, but then came Google Maps, and as you know, if you open your browser, you see some kind of this. This is our hometown, Kaiserslautern in Rhineland-Palatinate, in the southwest of Germany, near the border of France. And you look at it and you see the street view of that. And by just clicking on an icon, you have the topological view. You can switch between these two things by just clicking on it. And the other thing is, you can, of course, zoom into it, yeah? Zoom out on it. Yeah? You can go, you see Europe, we see almost the whole world, yeah? And that's a thing that you cannot do with the old. Even if you have a lot of different books and a lot of different street maps, it's not possible for you to have each and every level of detail that you want to see here. And this is only possible because what we decided to do together, of course, with the architects, not that we have invented Google Maps, but as Google would have done, they had to decide how to represent this. And how did you represent it? By scanning all the information that's available?
No. And now I'm really happy that you are still here and listening to all the time to this crazy UX guy. Now we are talking about architecture. Yeah, so now the interesting stuff comes. And just a disclaimer, we are not from Google. This is not sponsored by Google, and all the things that we know about Google Maps here is just by looking at the application of Google Maps and looking to the internet what they publish about it. And we will confront you in the next time with a lot of architectural decisions and how they contribute to user experience here. And these are the first two. So this is the concept of visual layers that are put on top of each other, and this vector-based map that we see here. Because otherwise there would be really a lot of information, but just by making these vectors, they can make a lot of cool stuff with that and can zoom really smooth. And now we look how it really looks when you do that. Yeah, we start here again, and now you see it's not that perfect. Yeah, you see here there is much more information in here than the outside when you scroll out of that. Yeah, and then you go on, and it stays like that. And that's interesting because this exhibits directly architecture design decisions that were made to provide a certain user experience here. Yeah, and then later it comes back and we have the full map here. And that's really interesting from an architectural perspective. We see here architecture decisions for load on demand and tile-based load. of course this could be done differently, and you could say you make it black until you have the full information there.
The perfect image.
The perfect image and user experience, but actually this wouldn't be the perfect user experience, because by that you already get a first idea how the overall thing looks like, and then it gets better and better. And of course the better your internet connection is, the faster it gets, but nevertheless it also works if it is slow.
And it's the same with the density of the information. When we again zoom into Kaiserslautern, you will also see, so you can't see any street names in here. Yeah? If we go deeper, we can now see the street names, yeah, of the city of Kaiserslautern. When we go there, we can, there's even more, and we can see the basic structure of some buildings there. And if we go even deeper, we see the name of the different shops that are there, and if this is the highest zoom level that we can go there, or the deepest zoom level that we can go, and we see the actual structure of the buildings that are available there. And there was also a very important decision to make here, that you have this information density appropriate for each and every level of zoom. So it would not be very helpful to have to see all the information all the time. Yeah? And this makes it maybe easier or maybe harder for the software architect to come up with such a concept. But we experience in so many different other projects, they want to display every information that's available at all the time, yeah? Even if it's not really necessary, and it's definitely from the user experience point of view not a good idea to do this.
And now look at this one here. So we would like to make you aware of that all that stuff runs in a browser. Yeah? And that is really fascinating, because browsers in former days, that were the stuff where you just display some text and so on, and they made it possible to bring all these things into a browser and to allow all this zooming, to allow all these interesting features, these calculations and so on. And this is really great things that need a lot of architecture between the browser and the backend on the other hand. Yeah, and let's just look back when they started with it. Yeah? So when they started with it, roughly in 2005, so applications looked like that. Yeah, we have some of the famous ones here from the Internet Archive. So we have PayPal, and we have Amazon, and we have eBay. They all look pretty much the same, and then there was also Google Maps. This also looked a bit the same than the others did. It's a bit like as it is today, but of course it evolved a lot. But by then, so many years ago, this was a really great achievement to bring something like that into the browser and to make all these architecture decisions happen and real to come to this user experience that we see here.
And to sum this first part of this presentation a little bit up, so as you see, if you would have to do everything in the old world, yeah, you would need a street map and a state map and the map of whole Germany and the map to add the topological information and maybe some special things that we didn't talk about, like bicycle routes or hiking routes or whatever you can see on Google. You would need a lot of this different informations there. But what Google didn't do, and we are still experience this today when we go in different industries and talk about new things. They tried to copy the old world. And they didn't do it. They made it even better, not only due to technical restrictions, but they made it better by not copying exactly the old world. And of course they had to go for great UX, as Matthias already explained, and this does not always mean having the perfect thing, yeah? But make it as good as you can with the resources that you have. And it's not possible to do this without integrated UX and architectural decisions.
And now we go on and look at a different level, and this is Google Earth. Yeah? A couple of years ago this looked like that. This was a standalone application, and today it looks like that. It's fully integrated with the Google Maps, and you can just switch from the one to the other by one symbol, and this is this one here. Yeah? And you can just jump over. So they brought also the whole application of Google Earth into the browser, and this comes with a lot of new challenges. Let's just look into it. Now we are zooming down to London, and you see all that information is now there in the way how they made images from the Earth, from the space. Yeah? And they go down really, really deep. And at some point it stops. Yeah? And this is here. There's a limited zoom depth. And this is interesting because they can't go deeper because they do not have more image information here. And this was a very deliberate decision by them at that point in time, whether to make or to buy that material. And this is really interesting today because you would say, oh yeah, it's pretty clear that you buy that material because there are some companies and they have satellites and this is really, really expensive. But nowadays there are companies, they send up 200 satellites and their whole business is making new and even better images of the world, and they sell this. But at this point in time, Google decided to buy that material, and we will come back to that later. Now let's again look how this really goes. And you see, this is a bit fuzzy here, yeah? And this gets better when you go down, yeah? So there's the information, again, that can't be displayed all at once just because it's not loaded. It's not available from the backend to the browser in the speed how the user scrolls down. Yeah, and they said, again, we do not make this the black one. Actually, they made one thing black, and this is when you switch from the maps to the Earth mode. But normally they don't do that. And they progressively load here. And we have a whole bunch of interesting architecture decisions behind that we all can observe from just looking at the system if we are a bit knowledgeable about user experience and architecture. So we have these progressive load features. We have pre-processed images at all detail levels, and they are again organized in tiles, so they are loaded in tiles. And we have parallelized load. We can see that if we go into our browser and observe the network communication, we see that they did a lot to parallelize all that loading of this tile information. And again, they are using this concept of the visual layers here. So that means if you just look at that, so it seems quite easy from the outside, but architecturally to make it happen, that such a great user experience is here in the browser, this is a lot and a lot of work to do and needs a lot of investment. So now I have a question to you. How many server requests are sent from your browser to the backends of Google if you scroll down from that level to the lowest level in a couple of seconds, so to say? What do you think?
Hundreds?
Hundreds, okay.
More, less?
It is more determined out of binary, like I see like when the focus, right, which point it takes from that, the depth, right, how much, maybe 10 or something is what I think that you get to this one, but it determines like that, the targeting and the attitude, right, what determines it's kind of binary, like you break it and get it done.
So give us a number. Give us a number. How many server requests?
Maybe 10 is what I think.
10. 10 versus hundreds? Something in the middle?
Someone more?
Okay.
It's more. So it's more than 1,000, and depending on how fast you do it, can be even much more or a bit less. But there's so much going on, and also going on in parallel, and there's binary information, and what you said in this splitting, this is also true. And they have a lot of intermediate levels they are loading as images and as content data. So there's a lot going on. So that's really interesting. And now I'm coming back to where this data comes from. And maybe you have seen it if you work with that. There's a very small font down there, and I just made this bigger for you. And at each and every point where you scroll around the globe, you get all the information where all the data and image material comes from that you are seeing now. Yeah, so they all the time expose where the data comes from. And that's also interesting because you see there are a lot of different sources at the same time that they somehow use and mix up and make an integrated view out of that. It's not just like, yeah, they are using one source and they're putting that into your browser. No, they have to mix a lot of stuff to make it really work. And that's also interesting.
And so, as you know, Google Earth covers the whole Earth, right? Let's see. So let's zoom down on the Seychelles. Yeah? So we zoom down, yeah, and we see a lot of sea, yeah, And then zooming down, and here is the shells now, yeah? And we go even deeper, we see this, yeah? And what you see here is, so there is no information available here, yeah? Only here where you see the darker blue and the whole island, you see actual information. So there's nothing outside. So there's, of course, there's a lot of sea. But there's also a situation that we experience a lot, yeah? Of course it would be nice, yeah, to cover everything. But actually, who requires information on a detailed level of the sea here? Actually nobody, yeah? And it makes it a lot easier for the architecture guys because they can save a lot of data by not having on each and every zoom level the sea, yeah? And so we have this relevance-driven depth. Yeah? Only where really information is required, we show information. But it's getting worse because, as Matthias explained, we buy this material from different vendors, and even within the same vendor, these images are usually or sometimes taken at different points in time. So when we look at these things, you see they are composed out of several images, maybe even the best available image at the time. But when you look at this, of course, this is not perfect, yeah. And you could look at this and say, oh, this is really shitty, yeah. So the users will not like this. Yes, of course, it can be a lot better, but the thing is, we don't have the material, and that's why we made the decision. We show the best thing that we can do at the time, or Google decided to do so, and this is a good thing because it's better to see the island in this format than don't see the island at all, yeah? Because you don't have the information here. Yeah? Of course, this is not perfect, but user experience is not always perfection. Yeah? And that's why we have to combine sources here. And this also happens on different levels of zoom. So this is the airport of Frankfurt, and now we zoom down on it. Here's a new runway, and we will zoom down on it, and the runway is still there, but on a deeper level, there's the ground before the runway was there. Of course, this is not perfect. Here's the runway, and if we go deeper, the runway is gone. Oh, this is a bad experience. Yeah? We can't do this. Yeah? But nevertheless, they decided to provide information at this level, but they don't have the new material, so they present the old one. And it's getting more obvious if you look at the new terminal. Here you see the new Airbus 380, and if we zoom down on it, it's still the Airbus 380, and if we go down, oh, this is the old gangway. And that's no problem, yeah? Because this is the best material that we could present at this time. Is this the perfect user experience? Definitely not. But it's okay enough to do so. And we have to do this trade-off to enable everything that I just said.
Yeah. And this is exactly what we are doing all the time in architecture. We are making trade-offs. Yeah? We can't make everything perfect, and therefore we trade it off. And now it's interesting, we look only at us as the user.
As a single
so
user.
far, the single user. It's Marcus and it's me and maybe it's you. Yeah, maybe then we have 30, 40 users, but that's probably not enough around the globe. So actually they have millions and tens of millions of concurrent users for that, plus they have all their APIs where you can also include the Google Maps and Google Earth into your own web pages. And all of that has to be served at the same time.
And this is so easy for the user experience guys, yeah, to formulate this requirement. Just make it happen for millions of users.
Yeah, for everyone the same.
You make
for
it
everyone
for me,
perfect.
Now do it for millions of users. It's easy to say.
And now it gets really complicated, of course, because you have to deliver all of that. Of course, the browsers are all running independently, but all the back-end stuff, this has to be served centrally, and it has to deliver that information. Of course, we can say here, it is a bit easier for scalability than some other systems, because the users are highly independent. That's clear. But nevertheless, the sheer mass is hard to handle. What they have as a big advantage here is, of course, their scalable Google infrastructure with all these content delivery networks, their preprocessing facilities, their own file system, and so on. But they nevertheless need to do a lot of content preprocessing with all these tiles and these images to make this delivered in such a short time. Yeah? And we as architects have to think for things like that and to trade this off again against other things. So here's an interesting connection. User experience strongly needs performance and scalability in many systems. Yeah? Often, in particular user experience people, don't see that directly. Maybe they see the performance but not the scalability. And therefore we need strong architecture. And what is also really interesting here in our example is user experience is a lot about having the right data at the right point in time at the right place. Yeah, and the right place is here, for example, our browser. And all these strategies that we talked about are about bringing that data from the data center to your browser because you do not want to download the whole globe data. Now we have another thing. We have Google Street View here. Yeah, everyone of you knows that. You're going you're zooming directly to a certain position in the street. And this is a completely new interaction concept. So user experience wise, really interesting. And we have new kinds of data here. But what is really interesting is where to get this data from, because no one could deliver that data at this point in time. So there was no buy. And there was the interesting decision by Google, now let's make it. Yeah, and make it meant to build this car. Actually, one car is not good enough to run through the whole world, so they built quite a lot of them. But this was also not enough. So they had to create a completely new image life cycle to make all this information available, to capture it, to process it, to storage it, to deliver it, to make this Google Street View experience possible. And as you see here, there is much more involved than just making a bit of user experience and making a bit of architecture. It can be more of an environment to make this really happen. So
this is also something that the user experience guys usually don't see. That for achieving the new functionality in the main system, you need a lot of different software supporting systems that enable this new feature. They don't see this, how difficult it is, what has to be done, what systems have to be developed just to enable a new feature in the actual system.
Yeah. So we together have to think differently, create new technologies, also reason about it economically. Fortunately, Google is in a quite good position for that. So for most of us, that's a bit harder. And have the supportive systems. Now we go into something different. Now we go into route calculations. Yeah? And there's another interesting stuff. So you need information now. Where can you drive how? So yeah, in a roundabout, here you can go that direction. In Paris, in UK, you go the other direction. You need to know where's the one-lane streets. You need to know how fast can I go where. Yeah, and that means Google knows how much time you need normally for a certain distance. Yeah, and this can be very different. So they need a lot of additional data. And what I also want to make you aware of here is all these calculations for this routing, they are happening on the server. This is not something that they transfer to your client, to the browser. They make this happen on the server. And this is a very deliberate decision because there all this information is available. And now we come to a contrast, because all of you know that. So this is the app version of it. Yeah? And the app version is also interesting. You can use it here to navigate. And here we get an additional feature. We really have a navigation system in it. That's not possible in that way with the browser version. And they make use of new sensors here, like the GPS and the gyro, to make navigation here possible. Now I will tell you a trade-off again. Here you see the distance to Flensburg is 607 kilometers. But if you really calculate it then, it's now 762. So
bad user experience.
Bad user experience, yeah. So for the first glance, they just made the direct distance between the 2 points to show it immediately. And then if you really calculate it, they make all the processing on the server side and show you the real one. So there's just this trade-off again between performance and accuracy. And obviously, the user experience guy liked it more in that way. Be fast and show something and not wait all the time. And now we have the offline feature. This is also interesting. You can download map material to navigate in offline case. So you see here we are in the flight mode, so we are offline. And nevertheless, we can navigate. And this is interesting because we downloaded a certain amount of the map, which is of course restricted. But nevertheless, it works. But a lot of architecture decisions had to come in to make this very simple request possible. Yeah, we want to also navigate offline. So offline capability is a very hard request, and it's very simple to formulate from a user experience perspective. But it treats us architects really, really hard. And you have to cache that data, you have to download the data, you have to see how you limit the space, because of course now you have to prefetch all the data to the details. And very important, now you have to do the route calculation on the client. So this changes the complete thing, how that works, and where you are doing your deployment of your functionality, only because it's in the offline mode.
And there's also a thing, when you are coming from such a popular well-used web application, and you experience some things like they are very responsive, they show always very fast results because they have all this server power in the back, and now go to the mobile device, connected or unconnected, you have limited power there, but you expect somehow, because this is somehow the same application, of course you expect somehow the same user experience, the same responsiveness, the same accuracy somehow there. Yeah? And we need to find a way to make this possible.
Yeah, so we see user experience here with many facets. So it's the interaction concept, it's the performance, internationalization, offline capability. This all adds to user experience. It's not just it has to be usable. No, it is very fine-grained, and if the user experience people make this nicely, they come up with a lot of interesting ideas. And new technologies, like these mobile devices with all the sensors, they add more capabilities. But for the architecture, as Marcus just said, we have to see also how this across different channels adds to an integrated and consistent user experience.
And talking about this different channels and these different things, to make it even more complicated, we now want to actually see the live situation. So we can calculate our route, as Matthias showed, and just now the user experience can say, okay, perfect, please include now the actual traffic situation. Yeah? You have everything. Maybe not, yeah? And you can do this in Google, yeah? And you cannot do this with the live view. You always have some kind of a history where you can say, okay, on a Monday, usually the situation looks like that. Or even Google says, okay, maybe tomorrow it will be look like that. Yeah? So it's getting even more complicated to do this. And what the user experience guys usually don't see is by adding this information, it makes it much more difficult to pre-process all this stuff, yeah? But of course I expect the same kind of accuracy, same kind of results, even with the live situation there. Yeah? And so this dynamic data makes it much more complicated than it looks at a first glance. Just include this. But where do we get all this information? Of course, we need some kind of an integration with the Android system, or other users that can somehow say, okay, there is a traffic jam, or there's an accident, or something like that. We need to somehow incorporate this data here too. This is not so easy to do, but very easy to formulate again. Yeah? And it makes it much more difficult to come up with a great solution for that. And the last feature that we want to show you, if this is of course not only for traveling by car, as we showed all the time, if we want to use, for example, public transportation, we can also do this here. Yeah? And for that we need even more data, and data that's not only based on the streets, but also this dynamic data of all the schedules, of all the trains, of all the airplanes, of everything, the trams that are available here, underground, everything, and you have directly access to that. It shows you very, very detailed information by traveling from Kaiserslautern to London, everything, where I have to walk, where I have to take a bus, where I have to take the underground, where I have to go to the train, everything is in there. And also I can access all the sites where I want to have to book my tickets for flights, for trains, for the subway, for everything. And to do this, we need an integrated solution, a whole ecosystem with this data. We have to connect, for the first time in our presentation here, to systems that are not under our control. It's not just that we buy data. No, we have access, live access to systems from different vendors, from different companies. And we still have to enable this great functionality. And as you see, the integration with the user interface was not really great, because we obviously saw that we left the Google Maps application to book the ticket with Deutsche Bahn, or we left to book the ticket with the English tram and everything, or subway there. And this is not perfect from the user experience point of view. Of course we want to have an integrated solution for all that, but that's the best that we can achieve at the time. So this whole ecosystem thing, talking about integrating partners from different domains, that use different systems, that have different business models, but for the user to provide a great user experience there. And so we have to provide a great user experience across the whole ecosystem there.
Just a very small advertisement. So there's another talk by us on Thursday about ecosystems. So just in case that's interesting for you. So now let's come back and finish and summarize, and in particular give some hints how to do this actually now. Because now we talked a lot about how this worked maybe for Google. We do not exactly know how they did it, but we saw the results of it. But we made a lot of experiences in the past, and now we want to bring that together. So as Marcus said in the beginning, people have to get a common view on it, common perspective. They have to communicate, they have to remove the barriers, and they have to jointly aim at great architecture and user experience. And that means we have to bring people together, because typically there's not a person who does both. There are people caring about user experience and people that caring about architecture, and now they have to come together. And they're asking questions like, where do we start? Will this cost a lot? Who is involved? Can we do this with Agile? There was not too much Agile discussion, by the way, around this, this day. And will this slow us down? We do not know. So, and we characterize that by these 4 dimensions. So they have to work together technically, personally, physically, and also temporally, in some sense. And we will go into that now. So first, technically, that means we have to understand each other. We have to feel the other's pain. And this was also where this talk aimed at, to make you feel the pain of the other side so that we can understand each other better. We have to understand both the role of data. This is both for architects and for user experience guys, not the thing that they are most used to in the past. We have maybe also to select UI technologies together. Normally this is either done by the user experience guys saying, yeah, we take this one, or the architecture guys say, take this one, and the other party maybe can't live with it very well. Yeah? So if we come up with this mutual understanding, so then we can better work together.
And we can't emphasize this feel the other's pain aspect of it. Yeah? Because usually they don't understand. Yeah? They just don't understand what's the pain of the other side. Really going with them and showing them what's happening. Having architects participate in user tests. Really participate, of course not interfere, but participate. Let them see how the users actually use the system. And the same thing there. Show the user experience guys what a decision has as consequence. How much more data we need. How much more storage space that we need, how much performance this will cost if we have this. So maybe a slight change on the requirements side may result in a much more easy to architect system.
Yeah. Now it's also about bringing people together personally. Yeah? And personally means we have to accept that we are different. Yeah? Also we are different. Maybe you experienced it, maybe not too much, but actually we are. And we have also to accept that we are different, and it's good that we are different, because the different personalities come with different competencies, and they can together bring something out that is better than everyone could do alone. Yeah, we also have to avoid this not my job mentality, because often the result is bad because everyone thought, yeah, it's the other one's job, and they just don't do it together. And we have to really teach this mindset to all the people also in the companies, because it's not good enough that only 2 are there who have that mindset. This has to be distributed, and you have to make the people want it. If you have to force them to do that, you will never succeed. And also management needs support for it, because it actually could cost money. It's kind of an investment, and without that investment, bringing the things together and collaborating, the good results will not come out.
And there is no illusion that everybody will like this. Yeah. If you do this, there will be people that like it and that they really use this new way of working together, and some people will hate it and will never do this. So we don't think that there's a way that we can propose to you that everybody in the company or in your team will like it and do it. But this is also, it is not my job thing. We experience this in our team so much that there is an important decision to make, and neither is an architectural nor a user experience decision. Some from the team will do this, regardless of his or her background. And of course, you have to also bring people together physically, putting them in the same room and doing work actually together. And by that, I don't mean there's the architecture guy right besides the user experience guy, and the user experience guy does user experience stuff, and the architect does architecture stuff. No, they have to work together on the same task, really actually working together, not only sitting in the same room, but sitting in the same room enables working actually together. Yeah?
We heard this also in the keynote this morning,
yeah,
where the keynote speaker said, if they don't talk to each other, you have the direct sign that things will fail.
Yeah.
The same is here.
Talk a lot.
Talk a lot, often. And it's also about timing, yeah? Of course. What we need is to guide and inspire teams. So this is nothing that will start directly and immediately. We have to guide and inspire teams. So we have to build this up. So this is a phase of introducing that. And someone has to take the responsibility and has to want to do that. We can't say, yeah, we have this mixed team. So there's this cross-functional team stuff that we often hear in Agile, but this is not enough if people don't act in that way. They have to see how the things need to come together. And there's also not a clear sequence of steps where we can say, first we do the user experience stuff, then we throw it over the fence, and then we do the architecture work, and maybe we show them again. No, that's not how it works. To really bring it together, that's a continuous collaboration that forms in the end the product. And so that means also there's no clear point for handover. Of course, there are concepts that we can share, but there's no exact point in time where this should be finished, and this is exactly the output to show to the other. This is more about talk to the people and get this done together. And this will take time. So it does not work from one day to the other. It needs time for introduction, and it has to settle into the minds of the people.
And this is the end of our talk. And if you, from the user experience point of view, if you tell to the architects just one thing, yeah, then this is that you are not the user. The architects need to know, need to embrace, yeah, that they are not the user. And then they have to identify him or her, and then they have to walk in his or her shoes, yeah, and then see this world from another point of view.
And if we do this in the other way around, then we have also a statement, there's more than the user. Yeah? User-centric is of course great, but it's not only user-centric, because in the end you have to build a technical system, it has to be economically feasible, and it has to support all the other quality attributes as well to some degree. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. And we are open for discussion, questions. We are also around for the next days, and we are very happy to discuss with you. Thanks.
I step in as the session moderator here again. I think we take one question. We have 1 minute left in the time. If there's anybody that would like to ask Matthias or Marcus something.
Yeah.
Okay, how would you find the balance between architecting a very complex system or trade-off of the user experience? How would you find the point between these two opposite directions?
So the software engineering standard answer, yeah, it depends. Yeah? So there's no predefined point in between by 30 or 40% in between these two things. For each and every decision, you have to sit down together and look for the best trade-off.
Yeah. And in particular also trade it off against all the other things, because it's not really trading off architecture versus user experience, it's rather trading off user experience against all the rest with the means of architecture. And in that sense, you have to see what you want to achieve and then see whether you can afford it.
Thank you for that. It sounds like there is more discussion needed. But we're going to get ready for our next speaker. So thanks once again, Marcus, Matthias.
Thank you.
Okay.